everybody. Glad you're with us today. It is a Sunday, and normally we would be recording What the Frock right now with Rod, but today there is no What the Frock for reasons. And I'm going to outline some of those reasons for you right now. There's nothing wrong with Rod. Rod is fine. But it's just been a really crazy week around the house of David, and I just didn't feel like I had the time to do show prep, nor did I have the time to do some of the things that we need to do to get ready for what. I know we joke about it being thrown together, but believe me, that's a joke. It's an inside joke, but it's a joke. We do a lot of prep for What the Frock, and I just didn't have time to do it this week. I just didn't have the ability, and I wanted to share some things with you that are happening. I've told you the day I went on the air in 2007 that I would be honest with you. In fact, that's one of the first questions a listener asked me when I met them in person for the first time was, are you on it? Are you really who you say you are? And with the exception of the moniker, Dave Diamond, I am. I've always been upfront with you, and I always will be, particularly with the podcast, because the purpose of the podcast is, the mission of the podcast is to give Ben something to look back at. I'm glad you come along with me. I'm happy to have you with me. But really, this is so someday in the future, Ben knows who I am, who I was, what I thought, all the things that I don't know about my grandparents and great-grandparents and the like, and wish that I did. And so, in a way, this is my record for Ben. And so there is sometimes some brutal honesty here about those things. That said, there are also some things that I don't talk about on the show at all. In my radio career, there were two stories that I was specifically asked not to comment on, one of which I still can't comment on for legal reasons. I was an ancillary party to a lawsuit between the city of Modesto and some of its employees. And the problem was that I was good friends with people on both sides. And so on the advice of legal authorities, I refrained from comment on what was then a big story in Modesto, and I didn't talk about it. The other story I didn't ever talk about on the air, and I never will, was the Chandra Levy story. And the reason for that was very simply that I was specifically asked by my rabbi at the time not to, because, well, as you can imagine, it was a very painful thing, particularly in the synagogue. And so he asked me not to. He didn't tell me not to. He just asked me not to, and so I never have. The other thing I don't really talk about are family members that aren't willing to be part of the show. And you know that I have Cami, my wife, obviously, doesn't mind me talking about him. Ben doesn't mind me talking about him. But I have 4 other stepchildren who didn't agree to that. I mean, they came into this when I was already doing it. It's not something they grew up with. And so with very few exceptions, I generally don't really get into any of this stuff with them. And so when something happens, I talk about it from my perspective. Please do not assume anything. Please don't point any fingers. This is my perspective of things, and that's all. It's been, as I said, a very stressful week. I don't think we've talked about the fact that Cami, last night was her last night at Naval Hospital Bremerton, where she has worked since we came here. In fact, that's why we came here, because she took the job at Naval Hospital Bremerton, which used to be a really great hospital. In my day, I've had surgeries done there back in the 1980s, and it was a perfect situation for us. Cami loved working there. It's a beautiful campus, but the Navy has been in the process of contracting things, as you may guess, and for 2 years, they've been talking about, well, we might close, we're going to close, no, we're not going to close, we are going to close, but we don't know when, and it's become a very stressful thing for everybody there. And so the option was, Cami had an option of staying at the hospital, just not in labor and delivery anymore. But if you follow the news, you know that there's a huge story in the news right now about a nurse who accidentally made a medication error and is facing jail time for that medication error. And this has nurses all over the country, it's fascinating, are just really uptight about this and really on edge about this, and Cami's one of them. And the new job would have involved her administering medicines that she did not feel comfortable with, did not feel comfortable doing. And when you add over that the anvil of if you screw up, you might go to jail, it kind of, weighed in her. And she loves labor and delivery. And so last night, as I said, was her last night at Naval Hospital. She has accepted a job at another hospital in the region. There are some really good things about it. There are some things that concern me about it. There's some things that concern her about it. But overall, we think it's a good situation. In fact, they wanted her. They essentially recruited her. It's kind of funny because one of the things in our relationship is we joke about is that I love to go on job interviews. Even when I'm fully employed, I like to go on job interviews because I enjoy it. It's a weird thing. I know I was an HR manager for 20 years. I just enjoy job interviews. I really do. I like to see what other people ask. I like to compare how I do it. And so it's not unusual, wasn't unusual for me in my CEO days and CFO days to just go on job interviews just to see what was going on. Cami hates job interviews. I mean, it is like one of the most stressful things she does. She obsesses about it. It's funny to watch sometimes in some ways. And she was really uptight about this particular interview. She was really uptight about. And we get over there because I usually drive her to these things. And the interview literally consisted of one question: when can you start? That's how her reputation as a labor and delivery nurse is. She's in high demand, and God bless her. She's amazing at what she does. And consequently, people recognize, game recognizes game is what they say. And she will be starting that job in a couple of weeks. She decided to take a couple of weeks off, which I'm okay with. I'm really good with. It's time we get to spend together. And we're looking forward to the new job, the new challenges, and some things that are coming about because of that job that are going to improve our lives overall. So it's going to be really, really great. Concurrent with that, though, there's some other things going on. So there's a little stress about leaving jobs, starting new jobs. Our next door neighbors, who I love dearly, are leaving on Tuesday. They are moving. I'm not going to get into why. They had some problems with the school. They've posted it on their Facebook stuff. They've posted it on Instagram. So if you really want to know why, you can go look it up. But they had some major issues with the school system that we have not had, blessedly. And so they wanted to move back to Arizona anyway. They just took that as a sign to go now. And so they packed up everything and within 2 weeks, and they're going to leave on Tuesday. And that's got me a little sad. They're very good neighbors. We've really enjoyed our time with them, but it's another change. They have 4 children as well. And so all the neighborhood kids are, kind of morose about it, but it is what it is. Pollen counts are way up here. For some reason, it's getting me today. Norwich is going back down. Rod and I sat in here yesterday and texted each other watching the Norwich-Newcastle game as if you listen to what the Frock, we were going to do. And it was just such a depressing game. Newcastle won 3-0. So I admit that. I acknowledge that. I lost the bet on a combined score of 6-0. But it was a bad game. I mean, it's not like Newcastle was just some overwhelming team. It's just that my team, Norwich, is so incompetent that I swear to God, the U.S. women's team could beat them. I mean, that's how bad they are. So it was kind of a depressing day. And at the end of it all, there you go. So as I said, it's been a very stressful week. And the only thing I really want to say to you about this is I'm not telling you anything anybody with any advice isn't going to tell you. Your rabbi will tell you this, your pastor will tell you this, your counselor will tell you that, everybody will tell you the same thing. When there's a problem, deal with the problem. If you excuse it, if you make reasons for it. If you say to yourself, oh, this will get better, it won't. You have to deal with problems as they are. You can't put them off. You can't make excuses for them. You can't say to yourself, oh, well, things will change soon, because they won't. They will get worse. If you deal with them sooner rather than later, and I'm particularly speaking here of mental illness, if you deal with it earlier rather than later, it will be painful, it will be difficult, it will be hard, it will upset everybody involved. But it's a hell of a lot better than letting it go and go and go and go, because eventually you're still going to have to deal with it. And when you deal with it, every day that passes that you haven't dealt with it, it gets exponentially worse. It's not linear, it's exponential. And by the time you find yourself having to deal with the problem, you're going to find yourself in a position where you're double dealing with it, because now you're beating yourself up because, well, I should have done this sooner. I should have done this sooner. I should have done that sooner. And I can't tell you that that's not true, because it is. But at the same time, you don't need to feel even worse about having to deal with it. You really don't. It's hard. The hardest part of those sorts of things is that it doesn't just affect the person who's ill. It affects everybody around them. And that's problematic. It's potentially dangerous. All I can say is this: we are blessed. I mean, we are blessed as a people to live in the 21st century. This isn't the 1940s again, or even before that. I did actually meet my great-grandmother one time. I remember it very well, but I didn't know her. I mean, I was very, very young when I met her, but everything I have discovered subsequently tells me that my great-grandmother was badly affected by mental illness. And the very fact that I'm who I am today is a result of her illness, not inherited in the sense that I'm suffering from what she suffered from, but the decisions that she made because of her illness led to who I am today, which, again, it's not a bad thing, but you wonder sometimes, okay, what if she had made better decisions? And you can't really play that game. It's a historical game. But the point is that in the 1940s and 1950s, nobody knew what to do about any of this stuff. And it was seen as just being that crazy old woman or whatever. This is the 21st century. We have medical science beyond imagination from the past. And the idea that we would allow someone to suffer or that someone would choose to suffer it's bizarre to me. It's strange to me. It's hurtful to me, because I've seen it too many times and I don't understand it. And maybe that's part of the illness. It could very well be. But those around that person have the responsibility of doing something. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't think you should. Maybe you think it's not my job, but it kind of is. And if it affects the people in your family, your areas, your workplace, whatever, you do kind of have that responsibility to do something. Even if it doesn't work, you've got to do something. Because if you don't do something, believe me, it will get worse. And when it does, you're still going to have to deal with it. The consequences of having to deal with it then are going to be far worse than anything you're dealing with now. Believe me, I speak from experience. It's not good experience, but it is an experience. And it's something that, if I had my way, I wouldn't have had to go through. But we make choices in life, and we have to honor those choices that we've made, because they come with responsibilities and they come with duties. Maybe we don't always do the best job ourselves of carrying out those duties and those responsibilities. And that creates more stress and more difficulties. But it's just another reminder that if you deal with it sooner rather than later, maybe you don't get to that point. And that's the advice I give you today, is take the time, tell people that that you love them, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and you don't want to have regrets going forward. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a Monday show. There's some fallout that we're going to have to deal with. I will be on Bill's show on Tuesday morning for Dave Does History. Don't have a clue what we're doing yet. If you got an idea, drop me a line, Dave@thedavebowmanshow.com. And I look forward to getting through this week and into a sense of normality, I guess, and what the Frock with Dave and Rod will be back next week. So thanks to Rod for allowing me to take the week off and deal with some things, and I appreciate that very much. Rod has been just an absolute joy to work with. I hope you enjoy him as much as I enjoy working with him, because really, their radio partners are rare and far, but good radio partners are rare, few and far between. So there you go. Well, it sounds like the neighbor has fired up his lawnmower. So I'm going to get out of here. Have a great day, everybody, and I will see you for sure on Tuesday for Dave Does History.